Okay, let's try this again. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. I wanted to take this time to do a little live stream movie review for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, I've already tried to do this twice today, and I had a lot of issues with my camera, with my computer, so hopefully crossing our fingers that this is going to be the good rep. Anyways, so if you guys are watching live or on the replay, thank you guys so much. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe down below for more Marvel and all other geek culture movie reviews. But today we got Shang-Chi, and Shang-Chi, it's a pretty solid movie. I'm gonna give it a good solid 3 out of 5 stars. I got some notes here that I wrote down that I'm gonna go over in just a second, but I just wanted to give some general thoughts on the movie before we get into the nitty gritty. It's a good, solid movie. It's a good introduction to the character of Shang-Chi, especially to those who don't know it. He's more like an obscure comic book character, so I'm not surprised if many of the people that went to go see his movie didn't really know who he was. So it was a good introduction to his character. But anyways, let's get into this now. And if you're watching on the chat, just make sure you let me know if you saw Shang-Chi yet or not. There is going to be a spoiler review, so spoiler warning. And if you're watching on the replay, jump in the comment section down below. Let me know your favorite parts about the movie. Anyway, so we're going to start off with one of my favorite things from Shang-Chi, and that was the fight scenes. The martial arts choreography was absolutely insane. And the cool thing that I heard about it is that there was almost no wire work involved in this movie. So literally all the stunts that you're seeing happening, that's really the people doing those stunts. There was really not too much CGI used over it and stuff like that. They were actually doing those stunts, which I thought was insane. Like, imagine that. So the martial arts choreography was incredible, and I loved it. Me being a black belt myself, I sometimes start to nitpick at movie fight scenes. Excuse me. I sometimes start to nitpick at movie fight scenes and think like, oh, that's not real. You couldn't do that in real life. And there were some moments like that in this movie. There were some moments like that where they stretched their abilities a little bit too far, but I still enjoyed the heck out of it. You know, watching martial arts sequences is one of my favorite things to do. So, kudos to the martial arts choreographers. The second thing that I really enjoyed about the movie is, and to those of you who haven't watched one of my movie reviews before, I go over all the stuff that I like about the movie, then I go over some of the stuff that I didn't like about it. But, so the second thing that I liked about this movie is just the overall theme of it. The overall theme of this movie was family. Fighting for your family, fighting against your family, fighting and running away from who you think you are, or running away from what someone wants you to be. Like, for example, Shang-Chi, he ran away from his father after his father made him kill, after his father made him into a instrument of vengeance, an assassin, a killer, and Shang-Chi didn't like that, so what did he do? He ran away from his problems, like most people do. So I liked that overall theme, that journey of he wasn't really quite sure who he was after he ran away. He ran away from everything that he had ever known, and he was kind of lost until his father's men came for him and they tried to take him and take the pendant away from him. We're going to get into that in just a little bit, the pendants and Tao Lao and all that crazy magic stuff. But the overall theme of the movie, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the journey that Shang-Chi's character took. And by the way, Simu Liu, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but the actor that played Shang-Chi, incredible job. He made an amazing performance in this movie, especially for his first like mainstream movie. He did some other stuff, like I just learned today that he's done some sitcoms, which made sense because he delivered some of those one-liners, some of those comedic relief lines very smooth, very well. And he just did an amazing job. This was his first big breakout movie, and props to him. I can't wait to see what he does more in the MCU. I can't wait to see where his character goes next, because I was very impressed. And like I said before, this movie is just a great introduction to the Shang-Chi character. So if you had no clue who Shang-Chi was, or you had no clue what this character was about, then this was a good movie for you to watch, because now we understand where he is and what he's going to do going forward. The next thing I've written down here is awesome CGI, which comes as no surprise when it comes to Marvel movies. They don't hold back on their CGI budget. Great CGI, love the color scheme, I loved the cinematography. It was just a well put together movie. Very well put together movie. The next thing I have written down is old school kung fu movie. Old school kung fu movie, because I said this when I was watching the trailers, is that it had such an old school kung fu movie feel. Like, you know, they float across the air, and like the old Jackie Chan, like, wah style. And I miss movies like that, and I'm so happy that they had that in this movie. There was that scene in the beginning where the Mandarin was fighting against, I forget the mother's name. Oh, I forget their mother's name, but he was fighting against their mother, who was from a village called Ta Lao, which is like this magic, mystical village, and they used this different martial arts style that was like airbending, which was, I said that to my older brother when we were watching the movie. I was like, oh my gosh, she's like an airbender. It was really cool. But I loved that it had that old school kung fu movie feel. Know what I mean? So I miss stuff like that. And I think the biggest thing, the last thing that I've written here in the like column for this movie, and something that is probably the most important, is that this movie did not follow the typical Marvel movie format, right? This movie didn't follow the typical standard, here's your good guy, here's your bad guy, good guy must fight bad guy trying to destroy the world, good guy does not want that to happen. And, you know, so the Marvel movies, they tend to follow that same system, and it's been working for them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying this in a bad way at all. It's been working for them. They've been doing this for well over a decade now. So, but I'm just glad that we got a little breath of fresh air, and they stepped back from that system for a second, and they went with something different. It was more of like a coming of age, you know, finding yourself story, like I said before, which was not typically something you see in a Marvel movie. The closest thing that I can think of it would probably be the first Thor movie after he got banished and sent down to Earth. But other than that, I can't really think of anything else that's like a finding yourself, like who are you type of movie. So, but Shang-Chi did that. So those are all the things that I liked about this movie. Those are all the things that I enjoyed. Now let's move over to the other side of the column, and let's go over the things that I didn't like. And once again, spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, things about to be spoiled for you. Trevor. Really? They had to bring back Trevor from Iron Man 3. To those of you who forgot, in Iron Man 3, there was an actor that played the Mandarin, who turned out to really not be the Mandarin. Just an actor hired to play the role to be a big distraction. And apparently, if you guys watched the one-shot, which I'm sure most of you did not, but there's a one-shot called Marvel All Hail the King, which is like a little short in which we see what Trevor was doing after the events of Iron Man 3, after he was thrown in prison. And during his time in prison, he got broken out of prison and kidnapped by the Ten Rings, by the organization that the real Mandarin rules over. So, and then of course, in Shang-Chi, what do we find? We find Trevor in the Mandarin's dungeons, and apparently he was supposed to be executed, but then he started acting for them, and they loved his acting, and then they left him alive so that he could do more shows for them. I don't know. It felt like a really out of place thing in the movie. It was not needed. We'll put it that way. His character literally contributed almost nothing to the movie except for even more comic relief, which they had plenty of with Awkwafina's character, and even Shang-Chi himself was throwing out some funny lines. They didn't need more comic relief. And yeah, he said some funny things. He got me at some points. I was laughing. But it wasn't needed. It didn't have any benefit to the story. So if there's one thing, there's a couple things that I would change, and I'll get to that in a second. But the first thing that I would change about this movie is I would not have Trevor in this at all. Let's just push that out of our minds. Let's forget that ever happened, right? So the second thing, remember how I said that this moves away from like the Marvel movie format, where you have like, okay, there's the good guys, there's the bad guys, there's this big epic battle to save the world and the universe and stuff like that, and that this movie kind of broke that format and didn't really follow it. That wasn't entirely true. So towards the end of the movie, we have the big monster battle. We have the dragon, known as the Great Protector, that protects the village of Ta Lao. And then we have the evil one. I forget what the title that they gave it. At that point, I really didn't care. The evil big dragon creature that was supposedly manipulating the Mandarin into thinking that his wife was still alive, that Shang-Chi's mother was still alive behind that sacred gate, and that he was going to free his wife, what turns out to just be this big dragon creature and these soul-sucking creatures. That's literally what I did in the theater when I saw that was the direction that the movie was going. I went like this. You were doing so well. You were doing so well with what you had. You didn't need to bring in this big monster. Like, again, come on. It felt, that part of the plot felt so rushed and like crammed into the movie, and it just wasn't needed. Like, you had this big epic battle already built up between Shang-Chi versus the Mandarin, Shang-Chi versus his father, Shang-Chi versus the man who turned him into an assassin and a human weapon. That right there, that's all you need to say. You're already hyped for a battle like that, right? You don't need the big monster fight. You don't need it. So here's what I would have done instead. Ready? And listen, I'm not a movie writer. Oh, I just hit my desk. I'm not a movie writer, right? So it's not like I have much experience with stuff like this, but here's what I would do instead. Keep the attack on the village the way it's supposed to be, right? Keep the attack on the village the way it's supposed to be. The Mandarin's coming to attack the village, but the Mandarin's not coming to attack the village to set free what he thinks is his wife, which is really just this evil dragon creature manipulating his thoughts and feelings. He's going to that village to burn it down, because that village tried to keep them separate. That village tried to keep him and his wife away from each other, and it turned him away. That right there is motivation. That's vengeance, right? And that sticks with his character throughout the entire movie, right? Throughout the entire movie leading up to the point where he attacked the village, we were led to believe, okay, this guy, he wants revenge for what happened to his wife. He wants to conquer. He wants power. He's power hungry, right? And this village, it turned him away. So now he can have this approach of, how dare you turn me away? Like, how dare you force my wife to leave her home just to come with me? And now she's dead. And you're the one, I blame you. Like, have him do that, right? The original intent. And then have Shang-Chi fight him to save the village, right? When he finds out that his aunt is living there and that these are like his people, quote unquote. Like, these are the blood of his blood, stuff like that. His new family, right? Have him go there to destroy the village and have Shang-Chi fight to stop him. That's a great ending right there, right? That's a great ending right there. That's all you needed. So that was one of my biggest issues with the movie, was that we had started out going away from the typical Marvel formula, and then by the end of the movie, we'd gone right back to it. So that was probably my biggest issue, besides this next one. You ready for this? Buckle up. For the second time, Marvel has butchered the character of the Mandarin. Now, this is not as bad as Iron Man 3. Nowhere near was it as bad as Iron Man 3's butchering. Like, that was, I get it, they wanted a movie twist, and I get it, okay? But that wasn't what the Mandarin was supposed to be. Then we had this movie, right? And I saw that the Mandarin is going to be the main villain, and I was starting to get hyped up. I was like, okay, maybe they're finally going to do the Mandarin the right way. And the first thing that set me off, right, that set a little alarm ringing in my head, was if you look at the picture that's right next to me, the 10 rings were not actually rings, right? In the comics, the 10 rings are rings that go on your fingers, right? He has a ring on each finger and his thumbs. If you look at the picture next to me, the 10 rings are arm circlets. They're like bracelets, right? So that's the first thing that got me like, I don't know about this, but you know what? I'm going to give it a chance, because it seems like they're doing it the right way, right? The rings grant him power. And in the comics, that's what happens. The rings grant the Mandarin power. Now, here's the problem that I have with it. The 10 rings are not just supposed to grant him energy power. Like, he can blast people, blast them. Like, it doesn't turn him into Iron Man, and he's not able to, like, shoot them out like whips and stuff like that, energy whips and stuff like that, and control them like that. Like, don't get me wrong, that was pretty darn cool. That was pretty darn cool to see. And I enjoyed some of the fight scenes with the rings like that. It was pretty darn cool. but it's not what the Mandarin is supposed to be. Each ring is supposed to give him a different power. There's a ring of fire projection. There's a ring of ice projection. There's a ring of telekinesis. There's a ring of psionic power. There's a ring that creates illusions. Each ring had a different power, right? Each ring had a different power. One ring, I don't remember exactly how it went. One ring used dark energy to create like darkness and shadows and stuff like that. And they also grant him eternal life, which in the movie they did right. The rings granted him eternal life. But the only problem that I have with this is that they didn't make the rings normal. Now, as it turns out, I think there's a reason for that. And we're going to get into that in a little bit, which is why I can accept the way they have the rings right now. I can accept them. But it just irks me a little bit that 2 times they used the character of the Mandarin, and 2 times they really didn't use him the right way. Maybe this is just me being like, oh, I'm a comic book fan and you're not being comic accurate. Maybe I'm embracing that side of me a little bit, but when it comes down to it, my opinion really doesn't matter too much. The only person my opinion matters is to me. That's it. You know what I mean? This did not detract from the movie at all, the way that they had the Mandarin character. As a matter of fact, I kind of think it fit with the movie a little bit better. But that's just one of the things that I really made me go, man, you could have had the actual Mandarin with the actual rings. But this is something that I can get over because of where I think they're going with it next. So that's what we're going to talk about next, okay? So by the way, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you guys think about what I liked about the movie, what I don't like about the movie. Let me know your thoughts. Now let's get to the post-credit scenes. The first post-credit scene, we have Wong talking to Shang-Chi about the rings, and he's like inspecting them, and there's a hologram of Captain Marvel there. There's a hologram of Bruce, who's back to being regular Bruce now, and now him and the Hulk are no longer combined. Interesting. Hope we learn more about that in the next couple movies, or the next couple Disney Plus shows. But either which way, that scene right there where they're talking about like, oh, these rings, they like predate. Like you say that your father found them 1,000 years ago. Well, these rings are even older than 1,000 years. They were on Earth way before that. And it's like, ooh. And then we find out that the rings are sending a signal. And here's where I think that this is why I'm okay with them changing what the rings are. I think the rings are not magical artifacts. I think the rings are scientifically engineered weapons. I think the rings are weapons. I think they're a piece of technology. And what MCU villain do we know that uses technology as his main weapon and was just introduced into the MCU? Kang the Conqueror. Kang the Conqueror. So I think that those rings are sending a signal to Kang right now. We know that Kang is around now because we've all seen Loki, right? We all watched the Loki Disney Plus show. I think those rings are sending a signal to Kang the Conqueror. That they're sending him a signal that these weapons have been activated and that they were originally being used by him and then he lost them. That's what I think. That's my theory. That's how they're going to tie this into what's coming, into Kang being the next big bad, right? So that's what I'm thinking. Okay, then, and for that reason, I'm okay with them changing the rings the way that they did. They could not have pulled that off with them being the actual rings from the comics, right? I suppose they could have, but it just wouldn't have made as much sense. So in this case, even though it makes me a little bit like, but I'm happy that they're going with the Kang direction, if you know what I mean. Now, the second post-credit scene, where we see Shang-Chi's sister, and I really didn't talk about the sister too much. I guess I really didn't talk about her too much because she did feel like a side character. I mean, she was a side character, but her character didn't play too big a role in the series when it really came down to it. Yeah, she had the other pendant, which leads to Tal Lo, or whatever the village name is. She did have the other pendant, but that was about, that was about the extent of her character. Gave, Shang-Chi a little bit more character development, but I did not find, I did not find too much her character being that important until the second post-credit scene, where his sister has taken control of the organization known as the Ten Rings. Now she is the master. So with her father being dead, right, with Mandarin being killed by the soul-sucking evil dragon thing, which I hated, that's how they had him go out. Like, come on, man. Come on. Anyways, we're digressing. She now has control of the 10 rings. Is she going to be a good guy or is she going to be a bad guy? We don't know. See, during the movie, I kind of got both vibes from her. Yeah, she seemed like a good person and she cares about her family. But she also kind of had that bad guy vibe to her. So, oh, camera froze. No. No. Oh, well. Well, I got through pretty much everything anyways. So, thank you guys so much for watching. And this is the worst face for me to be frozen on. I'm going to see if I can maybe edit this down. I didn't realize I was already going for 20 minutes long. Jeez. Dang you, Canon cameras. Dang you. I'm trying to fix it. Hang on, maybe I can fix it. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. No, second. Okay. Well, in that case, maybe try turning it off, turning it back on. That usually works. Oh, there we go. Okay. Cool. Dag nabbit. I hate Canon cameras sometimes. Alright, well, there we go. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Her sister now has control over the 10 rings. At this point, I think this review is pretty much over. So there you have it, guys. That's my review of Shang-Chi. That's my review of where they're going to go with that character. I liked the introduction they gave to Shang-Chi. I liked what they did with the fight choreography and the overall theme of the movie. And hopefully, going forward, we're going to see more of him. Hopefully, we're going to see more about the 10 rings. I really think that they're weapons that Kang the Conqueror invented, and that they're sending a message to him, and that's how they're going to tie in Kang to the rest of the Avengers, which we see him conversing with at the end of the movie. Well, anyway, guys, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you guys thought about the movie. Let me know what you guys thought about what you liked, what you didn't like. If you agree with me, if you don't agree with me, either which way, all opinions are welcome here. You won't be judged for anything. Hit the subscribe button, and hopefully I'll catch you guys in my next